friends! So today I'm going to show you how you can make clay out of shredded paper. So this is an activity that I love because I think it's really important that we do things to take care of our environment and to keep our planet healthy. And one way to do that is to recycle. And so most of you are probably familiar with recycling by putting paper, cardboard, glass, and certain kinds of plastic into the blue recycle bins so that it gets picked up on trash day and you don't have to think about it. But what I prefer to do is to reuse things at home as much as possible. So like for example, my headband right now is an old piece of scrap fabric from a t-shirt. Or I use an old salsa jar to hold my loose change, or an old candle jar that I decorated to hold my pens and pencils. So I want to reuse something as many times as I can before I go and throw it in the recycle bin, so we kind of give it a longer life and get more use out of it. So that's what we're going to do with our shredded paper. So the supplies you need to turn this shredded paper into clay are your shredded paper. So if you have a paper shredder at home, that's perfect. If not, you can also see what other kinds of paper you can reuse. If you have old scrap paper, or you can grab some newspapers and just cut them up, rip them up, and use that. You also need some flour and some salt and some hot water. So to start is I'm going to pour my hot water over my shredded paper, and I'm just going to let it sit in this bowl overnight so it really absorbs all that water and turns into a really mushy paper. So I want to try to make a lot of clay, so I've added more shredded paper on top of my bowl, and I'm going to add even more water. You want to make sure all of the paper is evenly covered in water. And then you just want to mix it together so it's all, make sure it's all underwater. And so then tomorrow I will come back and check in on this, and we will continue from there. So it's the next day and my paper is nice and soggy from sitting in the water all night. And so for this next step you have a couple of options. One is like what I have. I'm going to use this hand mixer to mix up all of my paper shreds into really small pieces. I've also seen recipes where people take their paper and just throw it in a blender to grind it up. That seems to be a better way to do it because you can get into smaller pieces, but whatever you have available to you will work. You just want to try to get it as fine as possible because that gives it more of that clay texture. So the next step I already did off camera, and it's just that you want to strain all of the extra water out of your paper. So how I did that, since I don't have a nice strainer, is I covered my bowl in a t-shirt, flipped it upside down, and let the water run through the t-shirt so I could squeeze it out and end up with paper that looks like this. And so once you have your paper, this is when you start adding in your flour. Now the flour acts as our glue, and you want to add it in a 3-to-1 ratio. So if I had, let's say, 3 handfuls of paper, then I want to add about 1 handful of flour. And you can kind of mix with it and play with it. If it gets too dry, you can try adding a little more water. If it's too wet, you can add a little more flour. It's kind of up to you how much flour until it feels right, until it's feeling like clay. One more ingredient that we want to add to our clay is salt. The salt acts as our preservative so that we don't end up with any mold growing in our clay. So there's not really a specific amount for this. I'm just going to sprinkle it generously over the top of all of my clay and then mix it in. You'll know your clay is ready when you can move it and shape it and mold it, and then it holds its shape. So right now I'm working on molding my clay into a little volcano. And so you can see an example of a finished product. A few days ago I tested this recipe and I made a really tiny volcano. So here's what it looks like dried, and here's the size that I started to paint. So this is really hard and sturdy. It doesn't feel like it's going to break, so I really like this clay. So now that we've successfully turned our shredded paper into clay, I wanted to leave you with a few questions that you can just think about and brainstorm at home. So one is, why is it important that we recycle? And another question is, how can reusing things at home and giving them a new purpose help the environment? And then my last question is, what are other things that you can find around your home that you can reuse and repurpose and give a new life to? So as always, if you try out this clay recipe and you make it at home, we would love to see it. If you have other things around your home that you find creative ways to recycle and reuse, we would love to see that as well. So you can always tag us on Instagram or Facebook or send us an email.